I recently got back into reading and thought if I made a video about it, I'd help encourage me to keep going instead of giving up. The biggest goal I have with this video is to get better education, specifically in regards to politics and society, since I feel like I'm still behind on a lot of topics I've been trying to participate in online circles. I'd also like to be able to read these books while they're still here. I've heard people mention the possibility of book bans in red states and how the election went. I'm not sure if that'd ever spread where I live, but just in case, I'd like to start reading these books sooner rather than later. I get most of my political information online, and I thought reading through some published works might give me some new perspectives. Also, a lot of these books are going to be from my local library, so if you'd like to help support them, think about buying something from their Amazon wishlist, which will be the top link in the description. I also wanted to mention that I'll be excluding some of the stuff I've read while making this video, like fanfiction, books I've read to my nephew and kids at the library, and any books I dropped since I don't have a lot to say about most of them. And honestly, if I included them, I probably wouldn't be able to make this video because I fell down the JVIC rabbit hole and got sidetracked by fanfics for a whole week. Happens to the best of us. I will be talking about webcomics though. As a webcomic artist myself, I usually have a lot to say about the ones I read, so I thought I'd take some extra time to go through two I haven't had a chance to read. The hard thing about reviewing webcomics though is that a lot of them are ongoing, which means I'd have to take time in future videos to catch up on ones I've gotten behind on, which I don't want to do. So I'm specifically finding completed or dropped comics for this video so I don't have to do that. Anyways, I'm gonna start with the physical book reviews. Of course, I have chapters for this video so you can skip to whatever section you want. So if you just want to hear about the webcomics or something, you can just skip to that section of the video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the video. This is likely the shortest book I read this week. I originally got a much longer book about the Propaganda Fox news fuse, but I had to drop it because the author kept saying weird objectifying things about the woman he was criticizing, which is extremely unnecessary. Also, it's the only book I dropped. This book, however, was a pretty great starting point for people to learn how to critically look at news. Sadly, even though it was published in 2019, it's already a bit outdated. News coverage has gotten a lot worse over the past few years, especially with the rise of AI and rage bait being spread everywhere we look. It's been hard for a lot of us to get news we really trust. I don't know if propaganda's gotten worse in news coverage these past 5 years, or if I just wasn't paying attention to it before, but it's definitely been affecting a lot of people. If you're feeling scared about what's going on in the world, I get it. I'm scared too. I'd like to suggest maybe taking longer media breaks. I know I used to get annoyed when my parents would tell me I spent too much time on my phone, but they were right. Being online 24/7 isn't healthy. Hell, I'm not sure being on social media for 5 hours a day is healthy. I think we all need to take a break from being online a little more often, and maybe try to go out more. Maybe go to your local library, or a park, or maybe you can even go to a dog shelter and ask to pet the dogs for a little while. If it doesn't help, that's okay. You can find something else to help get you out. Take as much time as you need to figure out what's best for you. This book was a devastating read. When I chose this book, I knew it was going to be upsetting. You can't have an open conversation about guns without talking about the awful things that have happened throughout history because of them. But reading this made me realize I never actually thought about what guns' place really had in American history outside of what's happened in my own lifetime. I think everyone in America can agree that our education system sucks. We constantly gloss over important things within our history because a lot of Americans don't want to discuss how our country was built upon stolen land and what we did to steal it. My school went out of their way to work with our local tribes to discuss what happened more authentically. And even with that, there's so much information that just got cut out or ignored and definitely toned down. This book actually helped me understand some of the more horrific things colonists did in order to get this land. Finding out they would offer bounties of Native American skulls during the colonial and Piquet Wars is horrifying. It's sadly not as shocking as it should be, considering how colonists treated black people as well, and how our country still benefits from slavery and genocide to this day. It's still horrible to think about, but I think it's something we should be talking about more with how we still treat Native Americans to this day. I live in an area right next to an Indian reservation, less than a 10-minute drive to get there. I constantly hear other white people complain about the benefits Native American people get where I live, a great indicator for a person's morals, and usually a person I end up dropping contact with. I strongly recommend reading this book if you want to know about how guns have been used in America since they were introduced. It delves into the slave patrols, cowboys, mass shootings, and white supremacists and their connections to guns too. So this was definitely my favorite thing I've read working on this video. So this story takes place during the Great Depression in South America, I believe. I got contradicting answers when I was researching whether 1939 was during the Great Depression or was a separate state of depression. But that's what's happening during the story. The main character, Domingo, is struggling to find a job with the current economic crisis and struggling with the aftermath of a divorce and separation from his children. He's approached by a man offering a deal. Be his friend and he'll help him get a job. Very silly, I know, and honestly, I wish I was in his place because I also love friendship. Throughout the story, we're introduced to a mystery happening with a family that these children need to get to the bottom of. I know I'm not giving a lot, but trust me, it's incredible. I loved every second of this book. I don't always find reading enjoyable, but damn, this one just hit different. It was incredibly funny. The humor used throughout this reminded me so much of the humor you'd see in manga, though the art style also reminded me of manga, so maybe it's a correlation bias. I don't know if it's because of the time period, but it very slightly reminded me of Black Butler. I really felt like I was a kid again when reading this. It's weird to feel nostalgic for something you've never seen before, unless I read some of it on Smack Jeeves before it got Thanos snapped. I don't remember most of the shit I read from Smack Jeeves if I'm being honest. But the comic started in 2014 and that was a huge place for webcomics for a long time. So there's a possibility it was up there too and I stumbled on it earlier in life. This story really had me on the edge of my seat, not only because of the mystery unfolding throughout the comic, but because all these characters have such interesting dynamics with each other. And the discussions happening within the story are really fun to learn about. I don't know a lot about Latin American history, but it was cool getting a peek of it with this. There's also the misogyny and xenophobia you'd expect from the time era discussed, along with the class issues that'd be impossible to ignore with a story like this. To end the section, I want to share a slight spoiler, but it's genuinely so funny to see a couple divorce and then see both parties end up with someone of the same gender. That's the biggest bisexual W and I'm obsessed with it. A slice of life comedy about an alcoholic vampire discussing his life story to his niece. Generally, I read the description for the story and had to read it ASAP. I love comedy and I love vampire stories. For me. The character designs are great. The main character, Hugh, has an awesome design. And there's a few side characters with some incredibly interesting design choices that make the story really interesting. I think this comic would look great for a short indie animated project, even if it's a pilot or short film like Diamond Jack or Wolf in the Hell. The last page they posted was them announcing the cancellation of the comic. Sometimes you work on a project and realize you don't like it as much as you wanted to, and that's okay. It was a fun story to read even if we didn't get a full story. Hopefully this will remind anyone else working on their own project that sometimes it's okay to step away from something to work on something better. There were definitely a few kinks in the story and art, but it was cute, so I'd recommend it. Very short comic about the author's childhood dreams and the eerie vibe dreams can give off. The art style is really cute, specifically the 7th page is breathtaking, and if they ever sell out of print, I'm there immediately. The story is similar to those one-sentence horror stories you'd see on Reddit. I generally think some of these things would be really cool concepts for short horror games, like something you'd see in a 24-hour game jam. It only has 11 pages, so it's easily bingeable if any of you want something quick to read. Before talking about this one, when talking about this word, I'm going to be replacing it with the word adult fun time. I don't like having to censor myself, but I'm nervous about TikTok and YouTube taking this video down if I use the actual word, so unfortunately I have to do it anyways. This was the first book that caught my eye when browsing my library shelves. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but the art style on the cover really popped out to me, so I decided to check it out anyways. I was genuinely surprised to see it was a comic when I opened it up. It was set up in the social science section instead of the 3 comic sections they have, so it just caught me off guard. It's always exciting finding a comic with an art style you don't usually see in this genre. The book itself is very beginner, not a huge deal considering that's what's intended, though I will point out that it specifically focuses more on physical disabilities and not cognitive ones. I did learn some things from the book that I didn't know, like how some people use props and harnesses to help with pain and stiffness during the act. It also had a cool little activity page to help you and your partner or partners learn what they like during adult fun time, which I thought was really cool and could probably help start the conversation between partners when they don't know where to begin. It's nice to see someone else who grew up queer, lower class, and has to get special help in school. I don't remember most of my time in elementary school, but I do remember being in special education classes for a while, and being removed way too early and being put into the gifted classes instead. Still feeling that to this day. My math is atrocious, and I think you can probably tell I have issues with reading things aloud through my videos. Though I have been getting better since I've been reading books to kids at the library. Anyways, it was nice to read other not-cis people's experiences going through puberty and how devastating it is. My experience is a lot different because I've had issues with my period since I first started. I have a hormonal imbalance. I produce too much estrogen in my body and take birth control to help regulate them. It was constant throwing up, stomach pain that'd make it hard to get out of bed. I had fainted a lot, things always felt foggy, and I couldn't walk down a hall without feeling lightheaded and had to sit down. We actually put down a stool in the hallway so I'd be able to sit down more comfortably. For a long time I had this issue where my ribs would be in blinding pain. The way I'd explain it then was that it felt like someone was pushing their hands out from in between my ribs. So, painful. There's some symptoms I'm just not going to get into. While I can't relate to the writer in this way, I can absolutely relate to the crushing reality of what puberty does to a non-cis person. For a long time I tried to figure out an out. a way to get away from getting my period especially. My mom loves bringing up the time I asked if I stopped eating eggs if that'd make my period not come. She thinks it's the funniest story to tell other people. I don't want to talk too in depth about this comic since it talks a lot about sexuality, something I'm still wary about talking about on this channel with how they're pretty confusing with their censorship rules. I just want to say that it's a very good read. I really enjoyed reading it, and as someone who doesn't go out into queer spaces often because they're all too far away, it was great getting a glimpse into it. I'm hoping they have other stuff I can look at in the future. Before we get into this one, I just want to say that I forgot to say that I plan on talking about this book more in depth in a separate video. I'll be honest, I barely talk about this one. Just listen to what I have to say anyway. Please. Thank you. Art books are always hit or miss. Either they give you incredible information that changes your view on art entirely, or they give you bullshit that hinders your growth. This book, however, was written by the director of Piglet the movie, a movie I really enjoy. Therefore, I took this book very seriously when reading through it. I plan on making a video in the future where I practice what I learned through reading this. Specifically, I think it'd be a lot of fun to study how the show Arcane frames their scenes. Arcane does an incredible job framing their scenes in really interesting, dynamic ways. And this show's all I've been thinking about since the first batch of Season 2 released. After doing that, I could work on some concept art I've been thinking about starting to see what I've learned in action. Specifically, I'd like to do some stuff with these characters. If you don't know who these two are, this is Anjo and Chatham, my childhood OCs. I created Anjo when I first got into anime. He's an Inuyasha Fullmetal Alchemist crossover OC and I love him. Chatham's based off of Shadow the Hedgehog and Hummingbirds. I miss when I used to have a goofier imagination. My local librarian actually picked this book out for me. I've been working on my webcomic for years at the library, and he's always been my #1 supporter. Firstly, thank you, Mr. Librarian, you are the coolest. Secondly, if you get lonely while drawing, think about going to a local public space where you can take breaks and talk to people. I've always struggled with the overwhelming isolation being an artist intends to entail. I think that we should all be trying to interact with more people IRL. My local library has some art events they do. There's this comic class they do every free comic day. There's craft fairs constantly where I live. And there's a group of older women that come in twice a month to work on fiber-related projects together. Stuff like quilting and embroidery. They even taught me how to do needle felting. Made this little guy last time. He's a soot sprite from Studio Ghibli films. It was fun hearing a bunch of older women talk about the anime they watch. Sometimes I forget that older people can like the things I like, which is a genuinely an embarrassing thing for me to forget. Which is why it might be a good thing for me to actually be interacting with them more. You can always reach out to your local library and see if they have any events like this. And if they don't, you can always ask if they'd think about making one. Most libraries are willing to set up events if people show interest in it. So if you just mention being interested in a day where people come together to draw as a group, they'll likely be bringing it up in a board meeting and thinking about whether they have the time and resources to do that. Of course, not everyone lives in an area where they feel safe to do that. I know a lot of marginalized people will be uncomfortable going to local events if they live in a dangerous or conservative area. And I don't blame you for that. I live in a conservative town, and for a long time I was scared to go to events like these, especially by myself. That's why I'd have my sister go with me for a while, and once I felt safe there, I started going by myself, and I really enjoy it. If you think you could feel comfortable going with someone else, I'd highly recommend it, especially if it's someone you can point and laugh at some of the books with you. This was an incredible experience. I may not have read as much as I had wanted to, but I'm going to fully blame Arcane on that and pretend I had nothing to do with that. I'm really excited to make another one of these. Or whether it'll end up being long or not. I'd like it to be, but we'll see what happens when it happens instead of worrying about it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I do really like reading, even if it's hard for me to do sometimes. And it's even more fun to share my opinions about them. I want to end this video reminding you all to check out my library's Amazon wishlist and share the video. It'd be wonderful if any of you'd help them with any purchases or help find other people who can. The less money they have to spend on books, games, and projects, the more money they can put into resources like their food pantry. Thank you again for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed.